Welcome, welcome. Hi, I am Jenny Ari, La Gringa Salvadoreña, and welcome to Living Like a Local in El Salvador. And this Sunday, um, we're going to talk about tourist visas versus residency because recently, well, there's been some changes for number one. And number two, lots of people are asking, hey, I want to come to El Salvador. What do I have to do to get there? What kind of visa permissions do I need? What kind of how long can I stay? So in this video, I'm going to answer all of those questions about the tourist visa, just coming here as a tourist, versus residency, what the perks, the pros and the cons of each, and what you need to know for when you come to visit El Salvador. So here we go. Number one on the checklist, the very first thing on the checklist we have to go over it. Number one, there's technically, you will not get a tourist visa. This is something that was pounded into me. There's technically not a visa. Okay, so what happens is it's a permiso de turismo, or a tourism permission that they grant. And how it works is kind of like in other countries. It depends upon the country that you come from. Number one, if you are coming from, let's say, if you are coming from a category A country, and if you don't know what category your country is in, you can just Google it really quick. Just say, what category of country am I in? Okay. And countries who are category A, they don't technically need a visa. Okay. That means they just pay the tourism fee, which is $12 when you get off. And the great thing is that El Salvador is in their immigration at the airport. They've changed it around. So it's not two steps. It used to be two steps. It used to be if you're a foreigner, you would first go and pay your kind of your tourism fee for being a foreigner, and then you would go into the immigration side where they stamp your passport and all like that. But they eliminated the two steps, so now you just go straight up to the counter at immigration, and they'll just ask you there where you're from and how long you're going to stay. Um, and that's when you pay your $12 first before they process and stamp your passport and things like that. Okay, now, but a category A, that typically means you're like anywhere from Hispanic America, from the US, almost all European countries, what you'd consider first world countries, North America, countries like Australia, South Korea, Japan. Those are typically category A countries. Okay, outside of Cuba and Venezuela, those are not category A countries. Okay. Now, if you are from a country that is categorized as a B or a C country, then you have to ask for a visa. Okay, and you have to apply for like special entry permission, um, and then you have to go. Let me see. And then you have to go through an immigration procedure that's aimed at any foreign person who wishes to travel to El Salvador, who, according to their nationality, requires a consulate visa, or a consular visa is what it's called, to enter the national territory, and who does not have it or who is unable to process it due to the fact that there's no Salvadoran embassy or consulate in their country of origin residence due to your circumstances. Or so it's easy to just kind of make the application online if you are from a BC country. You just what you need to do is you need to type into, say, Google, look for PEI El Salvador, and then you can translate it into English in order to understand what are the requirements and what you need to apply for when you're coming here from a B or C country, or that means you have one of those passports from those countries. But as I said before, if you're from an A country, no problem. It's $12. That's it. Now, this permiso de turismo that you will get, it The maximum amount of time you can get is 180 days, but that does not guarantee you're going to get 180 days. So if you go in and they ask you where you're going, you're like, "Oh, I just have a conference this weekend, just a quick trip." You know, kind of you need to be clear and make sure you tell them how long you want that, because they don't have to give you the 180 days. So if they think it's just a quick trip, they might just give you 30 days because you just told them you're only coming for a quick trip. But the maximum amount is 180 days. And President Bukele changed that last year. It used to be 90 days. And there was a good reason why it was 90 days. Because, and this is something else to take into, something to factor into in your planning. Okay. That is when you are traveling, let's say you're not coming by plane. Let's say you're coming by car, like I did the first time I came through El Salvador. Once you cross into the C4, it's not just your immigration stamp. It's also you have to get a tip. So like your car has to get permission to be in that country for a certain amount of time. Now, what Central America has set up, they have like a C4 permiso. And what happens is that you, instead of going and paying for another one in every little country, because Central American countries are very small. If you're from the States or from Canada, they're really small. As opposed to if you're from Europe, you're kind of used to having small countries. So so what happens is they kind of combined it so you didn't have to get another tip for every single little country going through Central America. You get a tip when you cross into Guatemala, and that will last for 90 days before you have to come out of Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, or Nicaragua. Okay, so cross into Guatemala. It doesn't matter where you go. You don't have to get another tip. Okay, travel all the way you want, all the way to San Juan del Sur, all the way up to Roatan. Go anywhere in those four countries, and you don't have to get another tip. But the problem is, if you come into El Salvador, and that's kind of why residency or the tourism permiso was 90 days too, because it kind of aligns to have, you got to get your car out. It's about the same time you got to get yourself out of the country. But now that your permiso de turismo, or what you consider your visa, that's 180 days. That um, that doesn't mean your car can stay there for that long. Your car can still only stay there for 90 days. Okay. And so for example, I have some friends that were going down the Pan Am, and they loved El Salvador, and they stayed a little too long. And so they were only planning on staying, maybe 30 days in El Salvador and then going to the other countries. But they loved it. They stayed too long. And so they only had like a week till they had to get out. And it's not just getting to Guatemala or Honduras, it's going all the way. You have to cross into Mexico, or you've got to cross into Costa Rica. And those are both not very smooth border crossings, in my personal opinion, especially Costa Rica. Takes plan a whole entire day if you're crossing into Costa. It's drama. Let's just put it that way. So they had a week, so they had to book it. They had to book it down to Costa Rica and cross the border into Costa Rica. Now, after you cross the border, you can come back in, spend a day or something, come back in, pay for another tip, right? Then you'll get another stamp on your passport, and boom, that's not a problem. But so be leery of that. The difference between the 180-day permiso de turismo versus the 90-day permission for your car to be in El Salvador, because that's a big difference. Oh, there's some people watching. Hi, El Salvador ahora sí está siendo visitado por turistas extranjeros que antes llegaban solo a Costa Rica y a Panamá cuando visitaban. That's right. Ever, it's right. Like now, foreigners used to only go to Costa and Panama or Mexico, but yeah, there's a lot more foreigners are coming to El Salvador now. And you'll see El Salvador is not, it's not Panama and it's not Costa, and we don't really want to be Panama or Costa. It's a very different experience. We're a bit more raw than, and not as developed as you would say, or I would say not as gringoized as Panama and Costa, but we want to keep it that way. We want to keep the deculturation kind of low and keep it kind of pure Salvadoreño as much as possible. Gonzalo says, saludos. Hi, from Houston. Cool. Lo bueno de visitar El Salvador es que en El Salvador todo queda cerca desde la playa hasta el mirador. And that is, you're right, Ever. It is like everything is close in El Salvador. I don't know if you guys have, sometimes I say a lot on my channel that El Salvador is like, it's like living in Hawaii, like the big island of Hawaii, for like a quarter of the price. It's not like Maui or Oahu. It doesn't have like the tourism of Oahu, and it doesn't have like the lushness of Kauai. But if you've ever been to Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii, it's very, very similar in that you've got a big volcano here. 30 minutes later, you're at the beach. A lot of the same flora and fauna of, of Hawaii you will find in El Salvador. Um, let's see. Okay, so back to the subject at hand. So the permiso de turismo that you will get has the 180, and with that, you have 180 days to stay in El Salvador. After 180 days, you need to leave the country, okay? Because if not, you'll overstay your visa. And this just came up with one of our clients because a lot it's there's a lot of people that overstay their visa because you get in El Salvador and you just get in the vibe, and it's just so wonderful to be in a country where you don't have to stress and you don't have to fear about what's going on, or about being robbed, and always looking over your shoulder and looking over your back. And so a lot of people accidentally overstay their visa. And this is what happens when you overstay your visa. It used to be when you checked out of El Salvador, you went up and got your ticket at the airport. Then you would go up the escalators. They're kind of in the middle of all the ticket counters. You go up the escalators, and then you would check out of El Salvador. And this is typical if you're going across a border crossing. It's the same kind of process. You have to stamp out, check out of the country, and then you go and you check your car out of the country. You cross the line, and you check into the next country, check your car into the next country. Um, but what would happen here is at the airport, you go up to the top of the escalator, and if you're Salvadoreño, you go up one more escalator and get your pollo con pero, the number one drug exported from El Salvador. And then you come back down and you go through immigration, where they would check and make sure you didn't overstay your visa. If you had, then you would have to pay a fine, and then you'd go through TSA. But that they have condensed that down and kind of streamlined it. So now that doesn't happen. So you go up this escalators. If you want to go get your pollo con pero, you can go get your pollo con pero upstairs, or you turn. Hi, William. And you turn to the left, and TSA is right there, and you move through TSA. Um, so they've eliminated that. So what happens is people were asking, well, I overstayed my visa. What's going to happen? Are they not? Do I not have to pay anymore that I overstayed my visa? And from all the research that I have done and that I have seeked out, what I can tell is no, you're not necessarily going to have to pay. What happens is you will leave the country, but when you try and come back, that's going to be a different story. When you try and come back, that's when you will have a fine to come into the country. And from everything that I've researched and found out, and that fine can vary from anywhere from $50 to, like, I found someone said that they paid $325 for overstaying their visa, or overstaying their permiso de turismo. Okay, and it doesn't And just to say on another note is that, you know what, when it comes down to it, um, and this kind of goes into residency too, is just like you want other people to treat your country. If you want people to come into your country legally, to obey your laws, to um, to respect that they are a guest in your country, then don't be a hypocrite. Just saying. I mean, if you're going into a Latin American country, obey their laws, respect their rules, and be legal. And that goes into residency and what are the requirements for residency and how residency works. Um, Again, different from anyone that is thinking about moving to Central America, either as a retiree or just as a family, or you just want to feel safe again. Okay, there's a lot of difference. First of all, I work with Living Like a Local. We have relocation tours and we do medical hosting. And the biggest thing is we have legal services for foreigners that are coming to El Salvador, like immigration, contracts, setting up businesses. And one of, I'd say, half of the clients for our legal services, half of them are newbies that come from YouTube, that find us on YouTube or find us from referrals. Um, the other half of our clients are foreigners that are in El Salvador and kind of made a mess. They either tried to do it themselves, they tried to DIY it, or they went for the cheapest person they could find. And when that happened, something that's a little bit different down here is you get what you pay for, and customer service is not a thing. So, for example, somebody like did their research, watched a ton of videos on YouTube, and said, oh, "Okay, I'm going to go get this residency. I'm going to go apply for this residency, and this says these are the requirements. I'm going to go do these requirements, and it says I need a lawyer to sign this paperwork." Okay, so he goes up and finds, oh, I got a lawyer that says he'll only do it for $500. This is awesome. And he gives it the paperwork to the lawyer. The lawyer's like, oh yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of course. And he does paperwork. He gives it back. He goes to immigration. Immigration has some problem with the paperwork. Either it's too old or too, you know, they did something wasn't crossed right or dotted right or something needs to be tweaked or changed. You go back to that lawyer and you say, "Hey, this needs to be tweaked or changed." He'll be like, "Fine, give me another $500." There aren't refunds down here. There's no like the customer's always right. That's not a thing down here. It's if you ask them to do something, they do it. You pay them. That's the end of the deal. So that's part of the reason why we started Living Like a Local is because I personally, when I went to apply for my residency, oh, I'm a gringa. So I'm always like, I'm a DIYer. I'm like, let's strip out that bathroom and replace that bathroom in a weekend. Yeah, we can do it. And so I tried to get on there, see the requirements and do the requirements. And yes, the paperwork was not in line, and I ended up having to buy a plane ticket to go all the way back to the U.S. in order to get different paperwork that was newer. And then when I came back, so that's kind of why Living Like a Local kind of came to be, is because hello, I know. Let's admit it. If you're a gringo, you're kind of entitled. You're used to a really nice, cushy life, and you're not used to a lot of bureaucracy. And down here, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And so we created Living Like Local to kind of be a place where you could trust, where there was a lot more real customer service, where we made sure we walked you through every single step and held your hand. That's why a lot of people they'll ask us to piecemeal and oh, just do this one contract, and we're like, mm-mm. We're like, no, we either do the whole process to make sure it's done right, or if you want to piecemeal and just, have a notary sign this, have this, well, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to go find somebody else. Because too many people have come to us and said, "Oh, well, I just want you to do just one piece of paper." And then we'll do the one piece of paper, and then they'll go to turn their immigration in, and it'll get rejected. And then they blame us. It's like, no, look, our piece of paper was right. Your other things weren't lined up. That's not our fault. And when they get rejected, they get mad and then they smear you on the internet. So, so we said, nah, we're not doing that. Look, you come, we will step you walk, 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 step by step, even go to the appointments with you in the immigration office because we've had to kind of fight a little bit with the immigration office sometimes when they've been like, well, we don't like this paper. And it's good to have your lawyer right there next to you to say, yes, this paper is legit as per this code, this code, this code. And to kind of stick up for you if, you don't necessarily know the laws. So, yeah. So that's why Living Like a Local got started. Now let's talk about residency. Okay. Hi, Fernando. Um, so when it comes to residency, the reason why everybody looks, oh, I just want to get residency in El Salvador. I'll just type it in here, right? Okay. Number one, there are 16 different types of residency. That's why you're not going to find something online that says, do this. Okay. Because it all depends on your situation. And of those 16 different types, one thing we need to make clear right now from the get go about residency is that once you apply for your residency, you need to stay in the country for the next, well, let's say in the next 12 months, in the next year, until your first year of temporary residency is over. You need to be in the country for 8 months if it's broken up, or 9 months if you're going to leave once. So, in other words, you can be out for 3 months consecutively or 4 months total. So in other words, say you put your application in to get residency and you get your temporary residency card in March, okay? But you're like, oh well, I've got to go back for the summer. So in June, you go back June, July, and you come back the end of August. Okay. You come back and maybe leave the country again, say for 4 weeks, say in December or something. But you have to stay through that next March. Because if not, honestly, why are you getting residency? But if you're not ready to stay in the country to be a resident, then you're not ready to apply for residency. This is not El Salvador doesn't we don't want foreigners that aren't committed to the country. This isn't Panama. This isn't just go in and pay your money, get your passport and you're gone. No, we don't want to be Panama. No, President Bukele, the country, we're about people that really want to help build and make El Salvador amazing. And it's not like Costa. That's why a lot of some of those wealthy expat groups and nomad capitalist groups, they're like, oh no, don't go to El Salvador. Yeah, because you can't buy your way in. We want people that are actually committed. We don't want more colonizers. Mm-mm. Those days are long gone. That's not what we're creating. So, hi Carlos. Um, so that's why you have to stay in the country, 8 to 9 months at minimum, your first year of residency. Okay. So that's the very first thing you need to know about residency. Second, there is no digital nomad um, like visa or residency. So stop searching. El Salvador does not have a digital nomad um, residency or visa. What they do have something called an independent worker visa, independent worker residency, which is semi-similar. But honestly, every residency has different permissions. So with some, you can bring a car and not have to pay customs, which is a lot because the customs on cars can be like up to like 30% of the car's value. And so your situation, whether you're married to a Salvadoran or whether you're from another Latin American country, your situation is going to be different. And if you don't know, kind of like taxes, if you don't know all the ins and outs and what everything that applies to every single type, you may think, oh, well, I'm just, I just work online, so I'm just going to be an independent worker. And you try and fill that out, but you don't know the other things that's dependent upon. For example, there's a really cool YouTuber, Sarah, who's from Canada, who on her video, uh, she moved down, she's married to a Salvadoran, and she moved down to El Salvador. And recently, she's having immigration problems because she moved down there because she's married to a Salvadoran to get a residency. But there's problems because if you're just a spouse, you can't work when you're a temporary resident because that's not why you got residency. You got residency to stay with your spouse, right? So you so she got offered a job and um and wanted to take the job and stuff, but and then she's had other hiccups with not getting the paperwork from Canada. And again, this is why you really, I'm going to say, lawyers are not that expensive down here, but you need to get a good one because lawyers down here it's just a 4-year degree. There's no bar that they have to pass. So not all lawyers are the same down here at all. There's a very wide gamut of somebody that just that just got through university and maybe they didn't really go to a very good university and just says he's a lawyer and tries to do your paperwork and the paperwork doesn't really come out right versus somebody that really knows what they're doing, has done it a lot of times, and will actually kind of fight for you. And that's what living like a local, what we've tried to make living like a local. And that's why, yeah, we're not the cheapest, but it's also because we know what we're doing. Just saying. Okay, more things on residency. On the tourist visa versus the residency thing. Um, once you are a now your temporary residency. Once you get temporary residency, let me look over my notes. And now again about staying past your visa. If you have a lot of nicks in your if you overstay your permiso de turismo a bunch of times and have kind of like a lot of nicks on your record, that doesn't look good when you're actually applying for residency because that will come up. And the immigration office is, kind of like any foreigner in a new country, they look poorly on foreigners that are not keeping their rules and are breaking their laws. So that's why I don't recommend overstaying your visa or your permiso if you can't. Um, just keep it legal, you know? Um, let's see. Others. Okay. Um, hey, honey, can you open up that thing so there's more light in the room? Sorry, it's so dark in here. Next thing. Okay, about the residency stuff. And once you get um, the paperwork, once you get all your paperwork from your home country, there's a lot of paperwork from your home country, and then there's paperwork that you have to do in El Salvador, and you have to get a notary to sign your paperwork in El Salvador. One another big difference that I did in my other video that I'm going to reiterate here is that when you do that, you need to notaries down here aren't like notaries up north. It's not like I can just go to the bank and get it for free. No, to be a notary in El Salvador, you have to first you have to be a lawyer. Then you have to go through an extra like year or two of schooling to become a notary. And then after you get your notary, you get your stamp, and then there's more rules. So that that is a bit different, definitely. And also making sure you have everything lined up and you can do what you want because you might say, "Oh, well, I'm going to go get this residency because it's really cheap," But that residency might not make it so you can start a business. Let's say you've been in El Salvador for 6 months and you're like, oh, I see a great opportunity here. I'm going to start a business in that. No, you're not if your residency doesn't allow for that. Just saying. And one other thing I want to mention is if you have a residency where you're married to a Salvadoran, or if you're from Latin America, your temporary residency is only 1 year. Then you can apply for permanent residency. Now, once you get permanent residency, then yeah, you can go and come as you wish out of the country, but you need to make sure you don't stay out of the country. I think it's for 2 years. You need to come and at least check back in. Um, but you can come and go as you may. But after 2 years, you need to make sure you check back in to keep your residency if you have permanent residency. Now, after you have, I know for married to Salvadorans, after you have your permanent residency for a year, if you're married to a Salvadoran, you can apply for your citizenship. Now, will take um, citizenship will take. You are right, Carlos. Sorry. Um, Once you apply for citizenship, it takes about 9 months before you actually can become a citizen of El Salvador. And there's some things you have to learn. You have to learn like the national hymn of El Salvador. Um, I don't know if you have to sing it. I haven't gone through that yet. Or maybe you just have to say it. Maybe just say it if you don't have a good singing voice. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm not a very good singer. But and there's other things that you have to learn about El Salvador before you can get approved for citizenship. But as I said before, it's usually about a 9-month process before you can get sworn in. And once you have citizenship, then you will get your DUI, which is equivalent to like your social security number. And then with a DUI, you can apply for a passport. And the great thing is passports down here, it's like a 20-minute process. Nothing like nothing like up north where it's like weeks and weeks and weeks. Nope. You go right into immigration. Hey, I want a passport. Boom, boom, boom. It's super easy peasy. Um let's see. Oh, let's see. Are you guys have any more questions about residency tourism versus permiso de turismo, or what a lot of people consider a visa? Um, Carlos says it takes the whole day to cross La Aduana de Costa Rica. Oh my gosh. Yes, it does. It does. Costa Rica is, yeah, it takes about a whole day, honestly. If you're driving, yeah, or at least for me, and when I was driving my car in, they come out, they like go through the car, they go through the boxes, and it's you got to go this place and this building and that building, and yeah, Costa Rica is, yeah, it's drama. I have to say that. Let's see, any more thoughts? Nope. Okay. If you would like if you would like any other tips or questions about residency or about permiso de turismo, go to livinglikealocal.com. It's down in the description. We do relocation tours for families. Next one's coming up in November over Thanksgiving. We're doing one for retirees and for digital nomads and other words, childless people. Our relocation tour is over Thanksgiving, and you can sign up for that. Or we have a family relocation tour at the beginning of November, which is great because we're going to visit schools. We're going to visit the places and the hubs for family, what it's like to move your family down here, because that's a whole different ballpark from when it's just you and your spouse. And so I've got one tour that's focused on that, and then another one in November. And these tours, when people come from these tours, they are like, they go from saying, maybe El Salvador, to by the end of the tour, you are 90% sure, yes, El Salvador is for me, or no, El Salvador is not for me. Because honestly, I don't want you wasting your time. You can sit here on YouTube for the next 6 months, watching videos and scrolling and wondering or even like visit for a little bit. But visiting El Salvador is nothing like living here. Just think about when people come and visit you where you're at. You take them to the touristy spot where they go take pictures, but it's nothing like your daily life. And that's similarly about El Salvador. So that's why I put together these relocation tours. Oh, hi there, KMC. Let's see. In El Salvador, there are 170 volcanoes. Can you visit every one? I don't know. I don't think I have that kind of time, honestly. Here in the USA, there are 180 volcanoes. I know it would definitely visiting all the El Salvador volcanoes is much more possible than visiting all the US volcanoes. That would that would take a whole lot more time. Okay, so that's it for today's live. If you have questions, you can go to livinglikelocal.com and ask there, or I will see you guys next Sunday. Next Sunday, we're going to start talking about education and